Righty.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, thanks so much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Holly Miller, and I'm the program manager at PACD. I would like to thank you all for joining us for iMapInvasives training today. This is a Train the Trainer webinar offered to conservation districts and advisory committee members as part of the Northwest PRISM pilot program. iMapInvasives is a comprehensive tool for online invasive species data management and will be a very important resource for the pilot program as we pull in our partners and stakeholders to help detect, manage, and educate about invasive species. So we encourage the use of iMapInvasives to record the presence and absence data for invasive species whenever possible. And please take this knowledge that you gained today and share with your partners and community members so that we can increase the invasive species control efforts in our region. The webinar today is being recorded, and the recording will be shared with everyone who registered for the event. And we will also be emailing an evaluation link to you. So please take a moment after the event to fill it out and let us know your thoughts. And again, I'd like to thank everyone so much for joining us today, and thank you for participating in the Northwest PRISM pilot program. At this time, I would like to introduce our instructors for today's training. Amy Jewitt, the Pennsylvania Invasives Program Coordinator, and Brian Daggs, Invasive Plant Ecologist from the Western PA Conservancy and Pennsylvania Natural Heritage Program, will be teaching us about the world of iMapInvasives and how we can utilize the program during our invasive species control efforts. So without further ado, Amy and Brian, I'm going to pass it over to you at this time.
Okay, thank you so much, Holly, for that nice introduction. And thanks everyone for joining us today. We're really excited to have you on and be providing this information about the iMapInvasives program. So I'm going to go ahead and get things started. I do want to mention really quick, we will be doing some Q&A at the very end of the training today. So if you would like to hold your questions till then, that's fine. There is also a Q&A feature enabled in the webinar that you can type questions as we go, and then we can make sure that we get to those at the very end. So whatever you prefer will be fine. Okay, so let's begin. So before we jump into talk about the iMapInvasives program, obviously iMapInvasives, we're talking about invasive species. And I think it's important to make sure that we're all on the same page when we're talking about the terminology that can be associated with invasives. And there's 4 terms here that are on the screen that I just wanted to briefly go over, just to make sure that whenever we're talking about these things, that we're using the correct terms. So the first is a native species. And so when we were referring to something that's native, this is a species, plant, animal that is found to naturally occur in a particular region, ecosystem, or habitat, and it occurred there without the help of humans to transport it there. So that's what we consider to be a native species. So the next term, exotic, there's other terms that can be used interchangeably there as well, such as alien or non-indigenous. Those are species that have been either intentionally or unintentionally introduced into an ecosystem by people. And these are places where these species have not naturally evolved at. So they're not necessarily considered to be a nuisance or even invasive. They're just not native, essentially. So they're known as exotic species. And then there are some species that we do consider to be a nuisance. And very often that's where the term invasive can be used interchangeably. A lot of times people will refer to something that can be annoying as invasive, but that's not actually correct. And so it's important to remember that there are some species that maybe we don't enjoy and would be considered a nuisance, but it's important to remember that they're not actually always invasive. And so an example of that I have here on the screen is poison ivy. I think a lot of us that may be sensitive to that species do definitely consider it a nuisance in some areas, depending on how close we might be brushing up next to it. But it is actually a native species in Pennsylvania, if you're not familiar with that. And so it's a species that is actually very important to some of our native birds and other wildlife. And so in wrapping up on this particular slide, a true invasive species is one that is both exotic to an area, not native, And that also is known to cause harm in some way, whether that's to the economy, the environment, or human and animal health. So again, just keeping in mind if something is truly invasive, it does have to have both of those components, being exotic and causing harm in some way. So now we can jump into our discussion today about the iMapInvasives program. And I just want to give a brief overview of what it is, if anyone isn't already familiar with it, or a nice refresher for folks that maybe already know a little bit about the program and are utilizing it. So iMap is available online, and it's a database that we use for tracking where invasive species are being found, both their location and also any management efforts that people might be doing to control and keep them from spreading from place to place. And so at the national level, iMapInvasives is actually operated by an organization known as NatureServe, and then administered by individual participating states and provinces. So here in Pennsylvania, our iMap program is administered by staff at the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy and the Pennsylvania Natural Heritage Program. So Brian and I are two of those staff members that are administering the program, and there are a few other folks as well. So one of the main components of information that gets contributed to iMapInvasives is observation data or presence information. So where people are going and finding where invasive species are present. And it's important to know that any data, any observation data that is submitted to iMapInvasives is always expert vetted on the back end of the program by our staff that are the administrators, and also a team of experts that we rely on that may not necessarily be within the Conservancy or the Heritage Program, but we know to be trusted experts that can help with that QC process. And so that ensures that any data we are providing to the public that we are labeling as confirmed information has a correct species ID, and also the mapping of that record is done accurately. There is also 2 mobile apps that we will be talking about and showing off today in some live demonstrations. And those are used so you can go out in the field and easily collect data on where you're finding these invasive species or not finding them, or also treatment information. So there is 2 websites that you can go to for more information. There's imapinvasives.org, and then also the Pennsylvania specific program, which is imapinvasives.org. So just some additional kind of overview information here regarding the iMap program. Again, it is this online program, free to use. You do not need to pay anything in order to utilize it. And again, it's being used as a way to collect information and then show that off as far as where these species are being found and their overall distribution information. The next bullet point I highlighted because it is super important and something that I think is often overlooked by some of our users. Good photos for your observation data are so critical because that's what our experts rely on in order to confirm the data that comes in to iMapInvasives. And so sometimes we get data that has photos that is taken from a distance, or maybe a photo is very blurry and it's not really showing that species very well. And so it's difficult for us or our experts to be able to confirm that information based on that photo. So that's why it's really important, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in the training today, to make sure that you're slowing down and taking those really good photos to go along with your observation information. As I mentioned before, there is also the ability to record what we refer to as not detected or absence data in iMapInvasives, and that also can provide a lot of value too. Again, also treatment data, again, where people are going out and managing for these species. That's also something that can be recorded and viewed in the program. Email alerts are another fantastic tool that iMap offers as a way for registered users to stay up to date on where some of these new or more novel findings are being discovered across the state, or in particular areas of interest to you, such as your county or a specific place in your county. iMap also offers some filtering capabilities that allow you as a registered user to go in and view the data that maybe you have submitted, other folks in your advisory committee or conservation district have submitted. And so it can be a really useful way to just go back in and actually see that information then once it's been uploaded into the platform. There's also reports and the ability to export or download data directly from iMapInvasives as well for that additional way to kind of further analyze some information that's coming into the platform. And so ultimately, I think in for this audience and for today's presentation, it's important to have as a key takeaway that this platform is a really great tool for collaboration. So when you have group efforts, a variety of people going out and collecting data or doing work on a particular project, being able to come back and submit that information for documentation purposes in a similar place like iMapInvasives is a really great way to make sure that everyone is on the same page and that that information is going into one central location. So I just want to talk also a little bit about some of the data types that we offer in iMapInvasives and some of the other functionality and how that may differ across the board when you compare it to the online database versus our mobile apps. And sometimes people think that one tool can do something and something else cannot. And so we just want to make sure that everyone's on the same page in regards to that. So working from the top down on this chart, all three of these tools, the online database and both of our mobile apps, can record both presence and not detected information. So that's true across the board. If you're interested in creating treatment data, you can only do that in the online database and also in Survey 123. Our classic mobile app is more of a simplified tool, so it is not able to collect that information, only the presence and not detected. All three platforms can collect point data, so that's a non-issue. But if you're interested in being able to record more advanced data, such as a line or a polygon, you can only do so again in that online platform or Survey 123. Both of our apps are functional without connectivity, so you do not need to have an internet connection in order to use them. As long as they're already downloaded onto your device, you can go out and be in the middle of nowhere and have no issue using those apps. However, if you do want to use the online database, either on a desktop computer or a mobile device, you do need to make sure you have that connectivity. And then finally, if you're interested in viewing species distributions, creating reports or doing data exports, or setting up an email alert, those things can only be done in the online database. They cannot be done in the mobile apps. So just keep all that kind of in mind. This chart is kind of an easy, quick way to, easily reference that information if you need to come back to it. So I just want to go through and just touch on some things that we've already highlighted here at the beginning of our talk, just to make sure that it kind of makes sense for everyone. So again, iMap has this really great ability to share information in a nice visual way on a map. And so again, one of the key things that it does is being able to show off that species distribution information. And you can filter the database for a specific species in a certain location. So here we can see we're zoomed in on a particular area and we're looking just at Tree of Heaven data. And you can see the symbology is different. You can see the colors are different, and also some of the shapes are different also. And so we can see the green dots there on the map are representing the confirmed data, which is indicative of a point that has been reviewed and confirmed by an expert. The yellow dots are representing not detected information. And so that is the place where someone had looked for a species and didn't find it and recorded that they did not find that species. And then the blue triangles are showing approximate data, which is another type of presence information. It's just that the approximate data does not necessarily have specific coordinates where that species was found. It might be more of a broader, more vague description just based on the source of where that information came from. But it is still good information to have when you're trying to get a good understanding of what species are present in an area. iMap can show you presence data in other ways also. So here we can see a map showing county level data. So it's kind of that more statewide view that gives you just that quick indication of here's the species I'm interested in, and I just want to get a better sense of where it's been found across the state. So here, this is an example of BB tree, and we can see based on the data that we have in iMap so far, it's been found primarily in the southern part of the state and more of the eastern and central part. We can see that it is not yet widespread across the state. So that is just a nice way to kind of get that quick visual in your head of where something has been found so far. As I mentioned before, email alerts, they're a fantastic tool that IMAP offers as a way to keep you and others up to date by sending you a notification in your email for criteria of something that is of interest to you. And so again, there's new novel findings as a way that you can stay up to date on that information. So you can customize these as much as you want. Determine a specific geography, an area that is of interest to you. Again, maybe it's a county or a certain place in your county. And then you can choose to be notified about one or more species that might be found in that geography. So an example here, just to kind of give you, what you could do if you're wanting to set up an alert, is you could say, alert me when autumn olive is found anywhere in Butler County. You could customize that to be a different county. You could add additional species to that. So you could say autumn olive, Russian olive, and Japanese knotweed. You can really, do whatever you want there. But again, it's a nice way for that information to come directly to you rather than having to log into the database and check that information yourself. We also have that ability, as I mentioned, to be able to filter data in iMapInvasives, so you can get a sense of, what information you have contributed or others that you're working with have contributed. And so our filter records tool, here's a snapshot of that. So you can use these different criteria that you see here, the different drop-down menus, as a way to filter for data that you are specifically interested in. So we see you can filter by an observer, so that's an individual person, the species name. You can filter under one or multiple species. You can be more broad if you wanted to kind of know just like a kingdom or genus of a species. You can filter by date, so you're maybe only interested in records that were found this year or maybe this year and last year. You can also filter by organization, project. If you set up a project with your group, you can filter by a project, and also within a jurisdiction, which essentially is saying either a state or a province. Keep in mind in our filter records tool, there is other tabs there at the top. This is just the general tab that we're on, but you can utilize those other tabs to be more specific in the data that you are filtering for. So don't be afraid to kind of go in and explore that tool and make sure that you're getting at the information that you're really wanting to get, and then see that information come up on the map, and then maybe we'll be able to export it or do something else with it if you'd like. We also have these different report options in IMAP. I don't want to go through them too much in detail here, but I listed that information here for you to read over. But we do have these reports. One is called approaching region, one is area treated, infested area, and then also species list by geography. Each of those does a different thing that allows you to kind of really further analyze the data that is in iMapInvasives that would be kind of difficult to do any other way, just by doing some filtering on your own. And so these reports can be really useful if you want to get a better understanding of what species are found in a particular area, or how much area has been treated, perhaps by the group that you're working with. So that is all different options that you have in IMAP. And then also, again, that ability to export data directly from the platform. You can download presence, not detected, or treatment data. It's important to make sure that you are using that filter records tool first to specify what data it is that you want to actually download, and then also making sure that all of your applicable mapping layers are turned on in the database in order for that download to pull the data that you're most interested in. So you can download that in the form of a spreadsheet, a CSV file, or also into a GIS, whether that's a shapefile or a geodatabase. Okay, I'm going to turn things over to Brian at this point.
Yeah, so the iMapInvasives online database, as Amy mentioned, lets you, view and filter out tons of invasive species data. And one of the ways that that data gets into the database is through our classic mobile app. So this is a dedicated mobile app. It shows up as iMapInvasives in, whatever mobile app store. and it is used primarily as kind of a simple data collection tool. So you can create simple presence or not detected records as point data, as opposed to lines or polygons, and it does function without any internet connectivity. So very simply, in the app, you take a picture of whatever invasive species you're viewing. You specify which species. You have a list that can be either scientific name or common name or both names, and you mark it as detected. Similarly, you can mark a species as not detected, specify that species, and then you can use the photo instead to maybe take a landscape shot of the area you're looking at. Next slide. So the classic mobile app tends to best be used for things like very rapid and quick data collection. It's great for uploading and recording casual and incidental findings. Maybe if you're just kind of on a weekend hike and you see invasive species that you want to record. And it's also useful, as I put it, as extra data in between survey areas. So as an invasive species ecologist, I do a lot of intensive surveys that are usually within specific areas. And so moving in between them, I use the mobile app to kind of take extra data that isn't part of my main survey area. Next slide. So we're going to give some training and demonstration on these apps, but it is good to point out that we do actually have some recorded video trainings of these as well on how to use the iMapInvasives mobile app, as well as the Survey 123 app that I will talk about a bit more in a second. We will link these out, I believe, after the presentation today. Next slide. One of the other ways that data gets into the iMapInvasives database is through the Survey 123 app. So this is an app developed by Esri, and it's kind of an ArcGIS linked app. And what this app can do is create presence not detected and treatment records, and it can record all of those records as point data or line and polygons. This app is also functional without internet connectivity. So this is available on all mobile devices, and it's free to use. You do not require an Esri account to use it. And like I said, you do not need an internet connection to collect data. You only need an internet connection to then upload the data you've collected. This app is best suited for detailed data collection or structured survey efforts, or maybe tracking treatment efforts that you're doing out in the field. Next slide. And this is just an example of what some of that data might look like collected with the Survey 123 app. It gives you the option of a simplified point-based collection, or you could do the classic advanced collection method, which allows you to utilize all of those types of geometries. So on the left is an example of a point-based data collection with the Survey 123 app that I conducted over a point grid on a property. And on the right is an example of the classic advanced method where some interns with Pennsylvania Game Commission were mapping out invasive species using a variety of different geometries, polygons, lines, and points. Next slide.
Okay, thanks, Brian. So just want to mention, so we do have a website that is specific to the Pennsylvania iMapInvasives program. This is separate from the database itself that you can go to, and we have a lot of different information and resources on here that you can access. But the thing I want to point your attention to here on this slide is the ability to then go in and actually register for an account directly from our homepage. So you can see the arrow there is pointing to the login button. And so you can click on that, and it will take you to a page that looks like this, where you can fill in a sign-up form with your information, and that will then send an email to you to verify that and get your account created with iMapInvasives. So it's pretty easy. And then when you're ready to actually log in and use the database, you would also go back into that login button. And then there at the top of the page, you can see where you can fill in your email address and your password, and that will then give you access to the platform. So again, as I mentioned earlier on in our overview of the iMap program, photography is so important. The pictures that you are taking when you are capturing and recording observation or that presence data in iMap is absolutely critical to make sure that you're having those good photos that are going with it. And these are just a sampling of some pictures that I really love. And there's different characteristics here that I want to point out as far as what is really important to do when you're thinking about how to take these good pictures. So as you can see across the board, these are all really great photos. They're nice and clear. They're crisp, but they're not blurry. They're up close to the target species that that person was observing. But there's other things going on in these photos too that it's important to keep in mind. Again, keep kind of in the back of your mind, remembering that these photos are going to be looked at by an expert in order to confirm your record later on. So over on the far left side is a picture of Eurasian water milfoil. And you can see that the person actually took that plant out of the water, put it in a basin of a container of some sort, and filled it with some clear water, so that they were able to take a much better photo of that plant. Especially with aquatic plants, it can be very difficult to see them when they're in maybe like a more murkier type of water body. Here we can see that plant very clearly because they took the time to take it out, put it in something else with that clear water. So that's number one that I really like about this photo. But number two, they put a ruler in that image as well. So it helps to give scale and size. Again, different aquatic plants will be different in their scale and size. And so it's nice to have that as a reference for an expert who might be looking at that image later on. The image in the middle is showing giant knotweed. And one of the things that I really love about this image is someone included their hand right in that photo. And that's super helpful, again, for scale purposes, because just, again, based on the name, giant knotweed, the leaves of this plant in general are going to be bigger than that of other types of invasive knotweed. And so it's helpful to have that person's hand in the picture to help give size and scale to how big those leaves actually are. There's other characteristics to giant knotweed, such as the heart-shaped leaves. That is another thing that people will look for when they're identifying this species, but the size is something else that can be very helpful. And then also the photo there on the right, those are jumping worms, and those are a species that it's important to have certain diagnostic things about those worms that we can see, such as the catellum. But you can see that those worms are actually up off the ground. They're in a container, so they're easier to see than maybe they would be if they were on a brown, soil type of background. So again, in each of these cases, the person was really being very thoughtful about how they were taking these observation photos, and they were kind of slowing down a little bit and keeping those things in mind. And so that's what I would encourage you all to do as you're out taking pictures of the different species that you're observing, is just take that time, be thoughtful about how it will be most helpful to an expert to be able to then confirm the data that you are submitting. Here's just two examples of photos that are not so good to be taking. Again, just being thoughtful about what you're doing and how you are photographing the species that you are observing. So here on the left side, we can see this person was standing pretty far away from what it was that they were observing. I'm assuming that what they saw was probably maybe purple loosestrife. We can see some purple flowers in the distance. We can also see something that might resemble a cattail. But at this distance, it's really difficult, if not impossible, to know exactly what it was. And it's also not crisp or clear. It's pretty blurry. So this photo would really not be helpful at all for an expert to make a determination as to what that species is, unless there was additional photos that were included as well. So by itself, this is a photo that we could not use to confirm a record with. The photo on the right, you probably could make an observation ID from that. This is mile a minute weed. But you can see that the camera was focusing on the background rather than the foreground. And we do actually have an invasive species in the background too, that's Japanese stiltgrass. But nonetheless, again, it's important to make sure that you are slowing down, making sure that your camera is focusing on what it is that you want it to focus on and taking that picture that you're really hoping to get. Okay, so at this point, we are going to stop our presentation, and Brian is going to be doing some demonstrations of the mobile apps, and then I'll be taking over and doing a demo of some things in our online database. So I'm going to stop sharing, and Brian, you can start sharing whenever you're ready.
There we go. Do you guys see my phone screen? Amy, do you see that?
I do, yes.
Perfect. Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna do some live demonstrations of those data collection apps that we have. The first one I'll go through is our classic mobile app, which is our more simplified data collection tool. So I'm gonna click on that, and when you open it, the first thing you see is this little overlay that kind of gives you your bearings on how the app looks. The main things I want to draw your attention to is the add observation button in the top right and the 3-bar menu button in the top left. So then you just click on your screen to make that overlay go away. And where we're going to go to first is that 3-bar menu button in the top right. This gives you your options for selecting observations once you've made some, uploading or deleting them, and setting your preferences. So I'm going to open up those preferences real quick to show you what it looks like. In that preference tab is where you enter in your iMapInvasives user information so that your observations can be tagged to your account. You can also set all sorts of observations like the species name display in the list, whether you want to see only the scientific name, both the scientific and common name, just the common name. I prefer to keep it on just the scientific name. And you can set several other things such as picture quality, where pictures are saved on your phone, default map imagery measurement systems, and several other things. And then you can even toggle on whether or not you want that overlay to show up every time you open the app. And then you just click save to make sure all of those are saved. After that, you're ready to start adding data. So to make a record, you click that add observation in the top right, and immediately the first thing it asks you to do is provide a photograph. So you can take a picture and it'll open up your phone's camera, or you can select a photo from your library and it'll open up your photo gallery in your device to choose a picture from. I'm going to quickly take a photo. Luckily, I have this wonderful illustration of common buckthorn right in front of me, and I'm going to try and get a good photo with several characteristics in it. It's going to ask me if I want to retake the photo or keep it. I'm going to click OK. The next step is to choose the species that you're recording. Unfortunately, this is a scroll through list. You can't search it to quickly get the species you want. I believe that's coming in a future update where you can just start typing in the name of the species you want to record instead of scrolling through a long list. After that, you mark whether you want to record that species as present or absent. I'm gonna click species detected because I'm detecting a presence of buckthorn. If I wanted to say not detected, that would imply that I searched in a short area and did not see the species. After that, it'll take you to the map. By default, when you click add observation, it will immediately collect the coordinate for wherever you are. You can uncheck that blue check mark next to the GPS there, and you should be able to click and drag that pin around. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be working right now. I think that's something that needs to get fixed. So right now, the app will grab your current location for the presence you're reporting. And then after that, you have all sorts of optional fields you can add extra information to. You can tag it to a specific project. If you're working with a group of people, you can add the organization you're working with, and other additional information such as the area the invasive is in, its distribution type, and then a text box for any additional comments and information you want to attach to that record. After all that is done, you just click save, and now that record is added to your list of records in the main screen. So next step, after you have records that you're ready to upload and you return to internet connection, preferably over Wi-Fi as opposed to using mobile data, you're ready to upload this to our database. So to do that, we need to select this record. You can do that simply by clicking on that white box on the right to check it. You can also do this by opening that menu button in the top left and hit select all, and that'll also select your record. So once you have your record selected that you want to upload, open up that menu again, and there you click in the middle of that dropdown is upload selected. Additionally, you can delete selected records if you want, for whatever reason that you determine you don't want that record to go into the database and you want it off of your list. You can delete those, but I'm going to go ahead and upload this as an example, and I can delete it later because I know it's not a real observation. And after a few moments, it'll tell you that your record has been uploaded, and it should almost immediately be viewable in the online database. So that is the mobile app in a nutshell. Very quick and very simple collection tool. The other option for field data collection is the Survey123 app. This is through Esri ArcGIS. It's going to automatically log me into my account, but you can continue as a guest to use this as long as you've got the survey set up beforehand. I believe we sent out a tutorial on how to get the survey set up a few days or maybe a week ago. I think we can probably resend that out in case you missed it. So I have a few different Survey123 surveys here. I'm going to click on my iMapInvasives survey that I have in the bottom left and immediately see a menu to collect a new survey. You might also have drafts or surveys that have been previously sent in and uploaded. What I'm going to do is go ahead and collect. It'll load up the survey for me. And the first thing that it asks you for is your iMapInvasives information. So your person ID, your name, your email address. So when you open a survey, you fill this out, and that's how it knows to link it to your iMapInvasives account. Fortunately, you don't need to do this every time you open a survey. If you complete a survey, you can set that survey's answers as your favorite answers in the top right. There's a 3-bar menu in the top right to set a survey as your favorite answers or paste from previously favorite answers. So I have an older survey set as my favorite answers. And with that, I can then paste, and it fills out all my information for me, so I don't need to add it again. It has all of that filled out. One critical thing is to make sure that you have the right jurisdiction set. If you don't have this set, the records you upload will be under a different state's jurisdiction, and then Amy and I can't go in and confirm them or manipulate them or edit them as we need to. We need somebody from that other state to then do it for us. So it's very critical to make sure you have Pennsylvania set as your state or province. And so then it gives you the option of your simple or advanced data collection. Just to quickly show you what that looks like, the simple collection is pretty new. What it does is it drops a point and then buffers a circular survey area around it with a 5-meter radius. And then all the records you create are fixed to that point and that 5-meter radius. There's also the classic advanced option, which lets you draw a survey area as a polygon, and then you can fill it out with all sorts of polygon, line, and point records. So the simple is very simple. You can either click the icon on the left here to fix a point, to automatically grab a point from your device's GPS. I can delete that. I can click on the map icon on the right. And if the map would load, I could drag around to choose a point for my searched area and to pin all of my records to. After that, it's pretty simple. You fill out presence, any knock detecteds, and any treatments you did. I'm going to skip that for the simplified because it's pretty identical from that point in the advanced as far as the data you fill out, aside from adding different geometry. So we're going to proceed doing the classic advanced data collection. So the first thing it wants you to do is define your searched area or your survey area, and that is what you will stick all of your then observations inside of. So to start that, you click on the map, and great, this time it showed the base map for me. And then I can go in and draw a polygon that will be my survey area. So I'm just going to draw it on my block here. I'm going to make a survey area right here between Boggs, Kramer, and Smith Avenues. After you draw it, there's a icon in the bottom left to complete it and say, yep, that's the survey area I want. Click the check mark in the bottom right again, and now you have your survey area. It is important to note that you can collect data without connectivity. Like we mentioned before, you don't need to be connected to the internet, but you do need connectivity for these base maps to show up. So if you happen to be somewhere without any signal, you won't be getting the satellite map or any of these other options to show up. There is a method for preparing small packages of maps to use offline. That does require an Esri ArcGIS online account, which I don't think you necessarily need to pay for that functionality. And I can share with you that method for creating offline base maps if folks are interested. So after you make your survey area, there you have all sorts of data fields that you can fill out if you want to add additional information. All of these things are completely optional. So you can leave all of this blank and still upload your data just fine. But these might be useful fields for adding, additional information in context. And some of them are very quick, like denoting what type of landscape you have, what kind of vegetation is dominant, and so on. So once you have your survey area defined, you can then start filling it out with observational records. So the first thing it'll prompt you to add are presence records. So to start filling those out, you'd simply click that plus button, and it immediately asks you how you want to represent your presence as a point, polygon, or a line. I'm going to just quickly click a point, and just like before, I can either click the icon on the left here to just immediately grab my current position that my internal GPS is getting, or I can click on the map to move that point around. And I'm gonna change my base map here to the satellite imagery. And I'm going to fix this, say, in my driveway around the back. So after you add a point, it goes through, a pretty logical data flow of information to fill out. Required fields are going to have that little red asterisk on it. So obviously the species you're recording would be a required field. You can't upload a record without specifying what species it is. So after specifying your species, presence records allow you to upload up to 3 images with it. These are labeled as close-up, general, and infestation, but you don't actually need to follow these labels. You might find that you might want 2 close-up shots in order to capture diagnostic characteristics of a species. And you're not required to do all 3. Sometimes you can take 1 photo and that's fine. I generally recommend you take at least 1 photo and try not to upload things without any photos because, as we mentioned before, they're a very critical part of our data confirmation. And then after that, you have a lot of optional data fields to fill out. So none of this needs to be filled out in order to upload your records. But again, they're nice options to add additional information to what you're uploading. And then you get the option to either add more species onto that point you already collected. So then I can add another species to that point. Or you get the option to create a new geometry to represent points, which is the plus mark at the bottom as opposed to the top. So if I click that, I'm prompted again to, add a point, polygon, or line, and go through all of those data collection fields. I'm not going to do that for the sake of time, but I think you get the gist. Next, you can fill out not detected records. Not detected records will automatically apply to your survey area, and similar kind of drop-down menu that you can search if you want. So I can search in this for Rhamnus cathartica. I can also search the common name, buckthorn, and get the same result. You can search on common or scientific name. You can add a photo if you want. For not detected, that would be like a landscape photo. and then again, a bunch of optional data fields. The last thing you can do is apply treatments. And this gives you the option of drawing a new polygon for that treatment or using your searched area polygon that you drew in the beginning as your treatment polygon. I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I'll toggle yes there, and it applies the polygon that I drew for my survey area as my treatment area. After that, you can fill out, the species you treated. For example, I will say we treated multiflora rose. It automatically grabs the date and time that you opened, that you first started the survey at. You can click on that treatment end date field to then get the time that it currently is to designate at what point you finished treatment. After that, you have optional data fields for things like, treatment iteration or the goals of treatment and text boxes. The one required thing is marking what type of treatment, whether it was a physical removal, a chemical application, or introduction of a biological control. So for this example, I'll just click on physical, and then you have to click your methods. I will go ahead and click mechanical manual, but you can do multiple here. So I could say that I did mechanical manual and fire, and I planted natives all on this one treatment. After that, you have a bunch of optional data fields, again, for additional information if you want, but not required. So if I filled out all the required data fields necessary, when I click on this check mark in the bottom right, which I guess I did not, I needed to add a point there. If I click on the check mark in the bottom right, it gives me the option of immediately sending my survey to the database, continuing the survey, maybe if I click the check mark by accident, or just saving it in my outbox. I'm going to go ahead and save this in my outbox just to show you what that looks like. So now that I've saved that in the outbox, an outbox tab shows up. So from there, I can go to the outbox, and you can fill up your outbox with multiple surveys. And then in the bottom right, there's a button to send them all then to the database. After you send them, it usually takes, anywhere between an hour to 24 hours for them to get in there. I think it requires one of our partners in New York to actually press a button on his end to make sure they get uploaded properly. Yeah, and that is a quick run through, semi-quick run through of our field data collection tools. And I will toss it back to Amy now to show the online database.
Okay, thanks, Brian. I'm just going to get things set up here on my end. Okay, Brian, can you confirm you see my screen there for logging into IMAP?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. All right, yeah, so I'm going to take some time and thanks, Brian, again for that great overview of the mobile apps. And again, that's for that field data collection. The online database, you can also capture that same type of information, the presence not detected and treatment, and then additional functionality also, like being able to view those species distributions, creating email alerts, doing exports and reports, all those sorts of things. So I'm gonna go ahead and log in. And again, you can get to this page from our homepage by clicking on that login button. Okay, so when you first log into iMapInvasives, this is the page that you will see. It's a big map showing a bunch of orange hexagons. So you might be wondering, what is it that you're actually looking at this point? So over the years, we've had various jurisdictions, states and provinces that have participated in the iMapInvasives program. Some of them are still current and some are not. And so as you can see, these different places are where data has been collected by those active or no longer active jurisdictions. But keep in mind that you can actually record data in iMapInvasives in any location. It's just a matter of, is there a current administrator in that particular state or province that is actually going through and confirming that information. And so, like, for example, if you're, visiting California and you happen to be recording some data in IMAP from there, California is not an active state that has an administrator in place. And so that data probably will not be able to be confirmed, but you can still submit it. So obviously Pennsylvania is an active jurisdiction. New York is an active jurisdiction. Oregon, Arizona, Saskatchewan, those are all active jurisdictions, and also the Maritimes is one of our newest jurisdictions as well. So just want to give a very quick overview of what you're seeing here on the screen, and just kind of go through some of that basic functionality. So if we start over here on the left-hand side and click on this little hamburger menu, you can see, so some of these things, because I'm logged in as an administrator right now, will not show up on your screen, but most of these things will. So you can view the jurisdiction or network species list. So if I click on the jurisdiction species list, this is a listing of all of the species that we currently track in Pennsylvania iMapInvasives, and it's over 400 species at this point. So there is, a lot of species out there that you can potentially find. So that's a nice little reference to have. Let's get back out here to our main map. And we can see there is other things here. So we have projects. I mentioned that briefly before. Projects in IMAP are basically something that you can go in and create. You don't need Brian or myself to do that for you, as a way to categorize data together that would be useful to be able to then query for later on. So, maybe, for example, your advisory committee is doing a particular survey in a certain area, and you want to be able to categorize all that data together so that you could easily find it later on in the database. You could create a project for that. We've had a variety of other people that have created projects for various reasons for BioBlitzes. We've gotten data from Pennsylvania Sea Grant for their zebra and quagga mussel database. So we have projects set up for each of those things as a way to, again, easily filter for that data later on. We have a list of organizations here, users and persons. I'm not sure if that's just going to show up for most folks, but again, I'm logged in under my admin account. You can go in and look at your account and see the information that you have listed there. So I would encourage you to fill that out with as much information as you would like to. And then this is where any projects that you're a part of will show up, your organizations that you're affiliated with, and then if you have any jurisdictional privileges. And so all of that will pop up here in that menu. And then also we'll talk about this a little bit later, but this is where you can go in and create and also then view the email alerts that you have set up in the platform. So I don't want to spend too much time on that right now, because we will get to that in a little bit. So if we go back out to our main map, we can see also here on the left side of the screen, we have these zoom buttons, so you can zoom in and out on the map by using those. We also have this little home icon. So if you click that, it will bring you back to that default view of the map very easily. We have these, the little compass icons. So that will, you click on that, it will take you to your location. And then, or at least it should anyway. I'm not sitting in the middle of a water body right now. And then we do have the ability to quickly find a particular place that you may be interested in, such as an address or a place name or GPS coordinates. So I can type in the address of our office in Pittsburgh, and that will take me right to Hers Island, which is just outside of the Pittsburgh area. So it will take you right there. So additionally, up on the top part of the screen is the ability to create a record, which I will show you how to use that here in just a moment. You can use this go-to record. If you know a record's ID number, you can type that in and it will take you right to that particular record. There's the ability to look up specific presence records, not detected, searched areas, or treatments. This filter records, you'll remember that from one of the slides in the PowerPoint from earlier. This is where you would be able to go in and filter for specific data that you're interested in, you can use one or more of these dropdowns to build a more customized type of filter. And then keeping in mind that these additional tabs at the top will also be able to help you build on any type of query that you may want to do. The identify measure tool, I will show that in a little bit as part of my demonstration, but that's just basically a very easy way, the identify part of it anyway, to be able to look at a bunch of either dots or polygons or lines on the screen here in IMAP and be able to pull up a table that summarizes what those records are about. It will tell you the all the species names for everything you're seeing, the observers, the observation dates, etc. I'm going to skip over the site time series for now, just based on time, and go over and talk about briefly that export and report. So again, you'll remember that from some of the slides that we talked about earlier in the presentation. So here's where you would be able to run an export or a download of specific data in IMAP, or run a specific report that you would like to be able to kind of dig in deeper to some of the data that is available in the platform. Okay, so I'm going to just run through very quickly and create a presence record here in the online platform so folks can see that and the process to make that happen. So if you click on create record, and then here you can see you have the ability to create presence treatment not detected, or a multi-record searched area, which is essentially being able to create multiple record types, presence treatment not detected, all together at the same time. So we'll go ahead and just click on our presence, and we will zoom in on the map. I'm going to turn off some of my layers over here just to get the map cleaned up a little bit. And I am going to click on a part of the map here. You can also choose to enter coordinates, so you don't necessarily have to do what I'm doing here, where you're actually just kind of zooming in on the map and finding that location. You can choose to add a buffer to that point, or you can just proceed to the next part of the process here. So now it's going to ask you, okay, you've identified the place where you did your survey and you found something. What is it that you found? So you can go ahead and type in if it was one species, or perhaps you found multiple species here. So I'm just going to type in a few things here that come to mind. And it's going to ask you for the name of the observer. So it's going to default to the person that is logged in. So I'm logged in under myself. You do have the ability to actually enter data on someone else's behalf if you would like to. So say maybe this was a record that Brian had found. I can actually enter data for him. It's going to default to today's date for your observation date, but maybe this was a record that, again, like I'm entering data for Brian in this example, maybe this was something he found a few days ago. So you can actually click on that calendar icon and you can choose a different date if you would like to, if that makes sense to do so. Here's where you can choose whether you want to tag your observation to a particular project. It's optional. You do not have to do that. But if there is a project that you have set up that you would like this record to be tied to, you can just go ahead and choose that appropriate project name from the list. And that will be directly corresponding to the projects that you are a member of. So not all of the projects will show up that we have, just the ones that you are a part of. Here's where you want to add those photos of the species that you observed. Again, remembering earlier when we talked about the importance of taking really good pictures. So you want to make sure that you're adding in those really thoughtfully taken photos, not taken from a distance, but they're up close, clear and crisp, and are showing those distinguishing characteristics that we're looking for and that our experts are looking for. Again, just based on time, I'm going to skip over that right now. But we do have some additional data fields here that you can fill in. They are not required, but they are there in case you would like to use them. So you can say the number of the, in this case, plants that were found, the overall distribution of those species. So you can choose one of these options that makes the most sense. And then any applicable comments or additional information that might be helpful to include here, you can do so. There is an advanced details section here that you can click on. It's going to give you the option to fill in, again, just some additional information that is not required, but it is there in case you would like to fill that information in. And then because I actually chose more than one species for this observation, it's going to ask you those same questions again for that other species that you found. So again, adding at least one photo. You can add up to 5 when you're adding photos here in the online database, and all those same questions that we looked at prior. So then once you say continue, it's going to give you a summary of everything that you just listed as you're creating that record, and you can look through that. If there's something that you missed or forgot, you can click that back button and you can go back and fix that information to make sure that it's accurate. And then once you are happy with that information, everything looks good, you can just say complete. And again, this was just a test record, so we'll go back through and delete this later on. But it's going to give you the applicable identification numbers for the record that you just created. So here we're most interested in that presence record ID number. And we can click on that. It will bring up that information that we just entered. So here we can see again our observation date we filled in. This is a record that Brian had found. Here's the species that he found. We can expand that geographical information section and see all the applicable details. And then you can expand each of these down here. As you can see, we have one for Russian olive and one for autumn olive. And we can see again, because I didn't fill in any photos, nothing is showing up here. Except the reference photo. But if, again, making sure that we are actually putting in some photos, those would show up here. And then the same thing is true. You can expand that area for the autumn olive. You can go in as long as your record is listed as unconfirmed, which we can see that it is. It has not been expert QC'd yet. You can actually edit your record and make any changes or add things to it, like photos that I didn't include the first time around. That you would like to, up until that record is actually confirmed at that point. Okay, so that's how we create a presence record in the database. I'm going to zoom back out here, and I want to pull up another page that I had some kind of preset things here to show you guys. So I want to be able to show you how we look at different species distributions in IMAP. And so again, just for time-saving purposes, I've kind of done some of this beforehand, but I'll show you what I did. So here I've got that filter records tool open, and you can see I'm looking specifically for one species. This again is just for autumn olive. So I filled in that, and then there was a button down here at the bottom. You can't see it right now, but it would say apply filter. So when you click on that and minimize this screen, and make sure that your applicable map layers are turned on over here on the right-hand side. I've got the confirmed data switched on, and also that approximate data, which is also another form of presence data that is very important that you're having on as well whenever you're looking at species distributions. Here's what that map will look like at a very zoomed out scale. So we can see the orange hexagons are, representing that confirmed data, and we've got the blue triangles representing the approximate data. So if you choose an area and you zoom in on that area, you'll start to notice, as we get a little bit closer, that especially those orange hexagons are going to change. And I just have to give my map just a little bit of time here to catch up with me. So you'll see that those orange hexagons are now turning into these more precise confirmed locations. And you'll see that the color is now green. So again, we're looking at autumn olive. And so that zoomed out scale kind of gives you a general overview of where it's been found, just that point level data. But as you zoom in on the map, you can get a much better sense of where those specific locations are. And you can zoom around the map to any area that you might be interested in and be able to see that specific information. From here, you can click on any one of these dots or polygons. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this one up here. And that's going to show me that, this was the record that Brian found. And so you can see those basic details here from the map. You can then click on this details button, and that will actually bring up that specific record and all of its applicable details for you to view. So we can see this was a record that was created a few years ago by Brian. Here's the observation photo. that he included. If you're familiar with autumn olive, this is one that it's a very good idea to actually turn the leaves over because of the silver coloring on the underside of these leaves. And that's one way that Brian was being very thoughtful in his observation photo. And then we can see this is a confirmed record. So this record has been expert QC'd. He put in some additional comments here. The distribution, it looks like he did tag this to a project. And here's information also at the bottom about that expert that did do the QCing of this particular record. Also, just as a quick reference, so in the metadata, which is the kind of smaller font information down here at the bottom, we can actually see how Brian chose to enter this record into IMAP, and we can see that he used the survey 123 to do that. So just as a quick reference, that information is all there for you. Okay, so I also want to, let's see, show off our identify measure tool, which is really, really helpful. So again, in this case, we can see we're looking at a variety of data on the screen, and it would take a while for me to, individually click on each one of these points or polygons to bring up that table and see all that relative information. So a faster way and an easier way of getting at that is by using this identify measure tool. So say I'm interested in these data points right here. I'm going to click on area, and then I'm going to start drawing a polygon here on my map, and I'm going to include those points that I am interested in. When you're done drawing your polygon, you will double click and you'll see that polygon show up there on your screen. If you go to where it then says see what's here and click on that, you can now see a new table that's popped up there at the bottom of your screen, and that's going to include all of those records that are inside of it. So that's going to include both the confirmed data and the approximate data as well. And those are separated out by these two tabs here at the top. So you can just quickly scroll through that table. You can get a sense of the information that you're looking at. Excuse me, who the observer was, the relative observation date, so how old or new is this information. And then again, you can click on any one of these details buttons and bring that specific record information up to view. Okay, so I'm going to skip through some of my tabs here and find another section that I'd like to show you guys. So we talked a little bit before about running reports in IMAP. Again, if you click over here on that export report button, it will give you the option to choose different types of reports. Excuse me. And here I have a series of examples I'd like to show you for a species list by geography report and how they can be used to get at information very quickly for you. So here I chose to run a report that, excuse me. Here I chose to run a report that's going to show me all of the data that's found in McKean County. So getting at that information would probably be a little difficult if not for the ability to run a report on it. So I'll run through and show you how I did all this, but I just want to give you some examples really quick of what kind of data you can get from these reports. So here you can see I've got McKean County highlighted on the screen. And here's the report that comes from it. So we can see I've got a long list of species here. I've got both my confirmed data turned on and also my approximate, and that's why they're both showing up here in this screenshot. Excuse me. Excuse me. So again, we can see a long list of species that are found here, and this can just be helpful to have that general reference of what species have already been found in that area. So here's another example of a species list by geography report. Here I've honed in specifically on Clear Creek State Forest because I'm interested in knowing what species have already been reported there in IMAP. Excuse me. So again, I've set the criteria. I've got that location chosen on the map. And then here's the report that is coming from that information. So again, we can just get a general sense of those species. And then the number of data points are listed over here. And then the totals are listed also as well. And then finally, I chose another type of report that you can run. This is up in Erie County, and I chose a specific municipality to try to get a better understanding of the species that have been found there. This is Springfield Township, specifically in Erie County. So you can see that's highlighted here on the map. And then again, here's the report that goes along with it. So all that information is listed out for you. So I'm going to go back to my other map screen, and I will show you how I did some of these reports. Again, I just wanted to kind of show those examples to give a quick reference for you guys. So if you go to where it says export report, you want to make sure you are on the report option. So I'm going to choose species list by geography, and excuse me. I'm going to hone in on my map here, zoom in on my map. And say we wanted to replicate the municipality one that I just showed up in Erie County. So what you can do is say in this area, define or select a boundary area. And then you can say use existing geography. And that's essentially saying I want to utilize some of the mapping layers that are already integrated into iMapInvasives. And so you can zoom in on your map a little bit more. And then from the list over here, you can click on local municipality. And I'm just going to change what my mapping layers are over here. So you can see the municipalities are now going to show up there in Erie County. And I can click right on Springfield Township. You could do this for a different type of geography, like I showed McKean County. So you could just choose county instead of municipalities, or conservation lands if you wanted to do that Clear Creek Forest one. And then click on the map at the appropriate area and then say next. And then I added a snapshot, a map snapshot to my report by doing that here. And then you want to make sure that all of your data layers are showing up correctly. So it looks like the map is still loading, and that confirmed data isn't showing up just yet. But when it does, we'll see those green points, lines, and polygons that will appear on the map also. So when that does show up, then you could go ahead and say run report, that button down there at the very bottom, and it will give you that screen that we already just looked at. So here we can see that that data is now showing up. So you do want to make sure that you wait long enough for that to appear. So I just remembered really quick before we wrap up things here today, I do want to make sure I talk very quickly about the table of contents over here on the right-hand side. I'm sorry, I forgot that, but from before. I'm just going to try to clean up my map here quickly just to kind of get some things resembling normalcy again. Okay, so just really quick. So there's a bunch of things you can do over here. The first option, you can actually choose to change your base map depending on how you want to be able to look at the background of your map in association with the data points that you would have. So obviously I don't have any data on right now, but you can see the map will change depending on what base layer or base map you choose from over here. So you can choose, any of these different options. So we also have this option called layer from URL. So this is basically a way, and again, just for time purposes, I don't have the time to show this off, but you can grab other feature services that are available online that can bring in additional GIS mapping layers that you can use to overlay the data that is shown in IMAP with another layer to help to better understand what that looks like. So for example, you could bring in Pennsylvania Game Commission game lands as a layer into IMAP specifically, and look at that information relative to the data in IMAP. There's also data for national parks. There's so many different things. The website is called PACD, It's the acronym. I'm forgetting off the top of my head what it stands for, but that's where you can actually source a lot of these layers from. If anyone's interested in learning more about that, I'd be happy to talk more about that after today's presentation. This add distribution layer is where you can go and actually view county level data. And so just really quick to show off how this would work. So if I would filter for specific species like autumn olive, I can go in then and show that specific county distribution for that species just by clicking on the show distribution layer. So again, a very nice way to get a quick snapshot of where a species is being found. And we also have this section called layers on off. As you've probably been noticing as I've been doing my demonstration here, I've been coming back to this pretty frequently. This is where you can turn on or off the confirmed data. We also have the ability to turn on unconfirmed data too, if you would like to. This is obviously not expert reviewed, so do so with that in mind. But if you want to make sure, for example, that you just maybe submitted a data point and you want to make sure that it showed up in the platform, you can turn on that unconfirmed data and be able to see that point or not. You can also turn on that approximate data. Again, that's going to show you additional information on presence information for a species. So very important to make sure that when you're looking at species distributions, you've got confirmed and approximate turned on. We also have the not detected information. So that's showing where someone looked for a particular species and did not find it. And then we have finally our treatment information. And those are going to show up also on the map for where people were managing that particular species. There is additional layers available here that you can see other things. So we actually have, iNaturalist data that you can look at specifically in IMAP. This is going to be for the most recent 5 years worth of data that's coming from iNaturalist. So you can look at this as a way to complement the data that is already in iMapInvasives. So again, we've got our map filtered just for autumn olive. So the data that's showing up here, all these little pink diamonds are showing off autumn olive data from iNaturalist. We also have these other geographic mapping layers that you can use, again, as a way to kind of better understand where a species is being found on the map. So you can turn on the different counties in Pennsylvania. You can turn on our water bodies layer. I'm going to try to go through these quickly because it has taken the map just a little bit to load some of these things. We have conservation lands. So those are the things like your state forests, your game lands, those sorts of things. We have USGS topographic quads. These regional management partnerships are referring to, at least here in Pennsylvania, our cooperative weed management areas. So you can turn that on as a kind of a way to get a good sense of where those are located. We also have hydro basins, countries, local municipalities, and a few other things here that you can choose from. And then finally, some of these other things may or may not show up in your account, so I won't go over those right now, just for time saving. And then finally, we do have our legend here to make sure that you know what you are looking at on the map. So again, here in this particular screenshot, we can see we're looking at treatment data and our cooperative weed management areas. Okay, so I'm not sure I have time to show off an email alert because I know we wanted to have a few minutes of time left to go over a few remaining PowerPoint slides and some question and answer time. But I will just show that right here in that main menu, if you go to email alerts, and if you wanted to create an alert, if you go to where it says add, edit, new alerts, and then add a custom alert, this is where you can actually go in and create a new email alert based on the criteria that you might be interested in, such as a certain species in a particular location. All right, I'm going to bring up my PowerPoint again and keep going with that. All right, Brian, can you confirm that the PowerPoint is up again?
Yep, good.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So I know we've been giving you guys a lot today, so stick with us. We only have a few more slides to go through, and then we're going to take some time for some Q&A and some discussion. So again, referencing our website that we have, PAIMapInvasives.org, would encourage you guys to go and check that out in your spare time. Here's just some of the things that are available on our website. So we have information more so during the spring and summertime and some in the fall for some events that we host, like survey events. This year we hosted the scavenger hunt again for the 4th time. Some of you may be familiar with that. And also another event that we did as well. We do have a blog that we will try to update as we are able to. There's also a section called Be on the Lookout that helps to bring more awareness to emerging invasive species, so ones that are not as prevalent in the state, but are still ones we should be having on our radar. We also have information on the species that we track and also list those by categories. We have an invasive here, but not there section that talks about species that are invasive in one part of Pennsylvania, but maybe native in another part. So important to know about those. An example of that you can see here on the screen is Allegheny crayfish, where we can see that pink part is where it's invasive, found to be invasive, and the blue part is actually its native range in Pennsylvania. We also have a gallery of invaders where you can go and learn more about some of these species, see some photos, and just get some more general information. And then also our training archives where we've done trainings in the past and have those posted on our website. I will say the most recent trainings that we have done that are recorded are on the Pennsylvania iMapInvasives YouTube channel. So if you'd like to get access to this recording and other recordings or other trainings that we've done, that's probably the best place to actually go. And then finally, we just wanted to provide a little bit of extra information for folks that talk specifically not about IMAP, but resources where you can go to learn more about invasive species identification. So if this world of invasives is something that you're kind of just coming into, or one that you've been in a while, but like to have some of these resources as a nice reference or, refresher. So one of the places that I use very often is the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. They have just over 100 fact sheets for invasive plants that are available online. If you scan the QR code that's here on the screen, it will take you to that web page where they list all of those different invasive plants. And here's an example of one of the fact sheets that they have. This is for Japanese and giant knotweed. Here's some additional really nice resources. These are all available both in hard copy form, but also online as well. Again, if you scan the QR codes here, it will take you right to those resources that are available online. The first one there, the Plant Invaders of Mid-Atlantic Natural Areas, is focused, just on plants and more so not just Pennsylvania, but our region, and getting a good sense of what species are here. The other two were created by Pennsylvania Sea Grant and have more of an aquatic focus. So again, would encourage you to check those out if you haven't seen them already. Okay, so we do have some time, thankfully, here at the end to go over some discussion questions that we thought might help to give folks some things to think about and provide feedback on if you have any. But this is also the time that we'll take some individual questions as well in case anyone has any questions or comments that they'd like to provide. So we can kind of do both at the same time. So Holly, I'll invite you to come back on. And maybe you can help to moderate any questions or feedback that people have. So thanks everybody so much for your attention today. We hope that this was really helpful and informative, and we look forward to getting any questions or feedback that you have.
Thanks, Amy. Did you want me to just go down this list of questions for you then?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. So our first question, what, if any, new project ideas are you considering after learning about iMapInvasives? And I believe you can either raise your hand and the host can let you speak, or we can use the Q&A to enter some answers in. Give it a second here in case anyone.
Okay, it looks like Ian wants to, okay, Ian, you can go ahead.
So, would you think that the classic app would be the easier app to do like a quick training on to if you had a group of volunteers that wanted to go out and do a quick survey? It seems like it's a little bit, I don't know, dumber than the Survey 123 app. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. The classic app is pretty directly available just from like, you know, any app store on a mobile device. The Survey 123 does need a little extra setup to it. So it's definitely good if you have a like a larger group of, you know, less experienced folks.
I guess I would just add really quickly to that. I think that like anything that's new and you haven't used it before, it might seem a little intimidating or overwhelming. But as Brian can probably attest to, if you use something, you know, enough, it just becomes a lot easier to understand and becomes not quite so overwhelming. So there is perhaps a little bit of a learning curve with some of these things like Survey 123, but I would encourage you, you know, if you are feel savvy enough to try it and try it a few times and just see how it goes and maybe develop a habit that then it doesn't seem quite so scary. So we can go over maybe another question, Holly.
Yeah, I don't see any more. I don't see anything in the Q&A either. So what tools in iMapInvasives would be useful to your advisory committee? So like making more strategic decisions and project plans.
Okay, maybe we can move on to another question in case that would be helpful for folks. Yeah, as far as the apps, I know Ian just did ask about the Survey 123 app, but just based on the information that was presented on today, is there a particular app, one of those field data collection tools that you feel like you might prefer one over the other? And what were your thoughts on that and why? Again, we're looking for any kind of feedback and discussion here as much as we can. We'd like to make this as interactive as we can. Okay, go ahead, Ian.
So if you use the classic app and let's say you survey a 10-acre site and you come up with I don't know, like in the lower left-hand corner is where it's mostly located. Can you then go into the online to iMapInvasives and then create a polygon there with that or no? Because I know you can only do points on with the classic app.
Yeah, I would say definitely if like you know you're using the classic app to maybe collect photos and confirm IDs and then you go onto the desktop later and draw the actual polygons where you were seeing things. I think that's a decent way to use it. I would say I've definitely used it that way before as well.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any thoughts based on the information that Brian provided today on the data collection tools, what you think you might prefer using, and or even if you have used some of these before, and if you want to provide any feedback on that, that would be great to hear about as well. And if not, we can have at least one remaining question here that I just want to throw out for folks that's on our discussion page is there anything else about the IMAP program that you would like more information about? Maybe wasn't fully clear, we didn't have time to talk about today that we can help you with. Yeah, so any feedback on that would be great to hear as well. And I'll go ahead and advance to our last slide so that we have the contact information up for Brian and I in case anyone would like to reach out to us. But yeah, any additional information that we can provide to any of you guys, feedback would be appreciated.
I will say too, just in case someone has a question, like right after this event ends, we will have the evaluation that will go out as well. And there's a section there that you can enter some comments. So if you had any kind of comments that you wanted to put into the evaluation form, you can do that as well after the event.
Okay, well, it looks like there is no other questions or comments at this time, so that's okay. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to be on today's training. I know it was a little bit long, and we did go over a lot of content, so it's a lot to digest. But I would encourage you guys. Again, we said that this training was recorded, so feel free once we send the link out to reference that as needed. And feel free to reach out to Brian and I directly with any questions that you might have. We're always happy to, hear from you and help in any way that we can. So Holly, I guess if you want to wrap things up from here, go ahead and take the reins.
Yes, I would like to say thank you again to you, Amy and Brian, for taking the time today to teach us about iMapInvasives and all the apps and platforms that are available. I think it was a very informative session, so thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us again today. We really look forward to all the great projects that you'll be doing out there in the field. So thank you and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.